clear night when Tom Jennings, a long-haul truck driver with over 15 years on the road, set out on his usual route along Highway 55, known for its desolate stretches and eerie silence after dark. This highway was notorious among truckers for strange occurrences. Tom had heard the stories: phantom hitchhikers, shadowy figures, and inexplicable mechanical failures, but he had always chalked them up to urban legends or the overactive imaginations of fellow drivers. That night, Tom would come face to face with something that would change his perspective forever. Tom's shift began like any other. He loaded up his rig at the distribution center and set his GPS for the long drive ahead. The truck's engine roared to life, and he rumbled out of the city, heading into the vast open road of Highway 55. The air was crisp, and the stars were out in full force, casting an eerie glow on the empty highway. Around midnight, Tom pulled into a small rest area to stretch his legs and grab a coffee. As he walked back to his truck, he noticed an old, dilapidated building near the rest stop that he had never seen before. It was dark and run down, with broken windows and a sagging roof. The place looked abandoned, but Tom had a nagging feeling that something was off. Shaking off the uneasy feeling, Tom climbed back into his truck, started the engine, and continued down the highway. As he drove, he couldn't shake the image of the old building from his mind. It was as if the place had an aura of malevolence, but he dismissed it as just his imagination playing tricks on him. Hours passed without incident until Tom noticed something peculiar on the road ahead. A flickering light appeared in the distance, moving erratically. As he approached, he realized it was a lone figure standing in the middle of the highway, holding a lantern. He was dressed in old-fashioned clothing, and the light cast long shadows that danced on the road. Tom slowed down, unsure of what to do. The figure didn't move or acknowledge his presence, just stood there as if waiting for something. With a deep breath, Tom honked the horn, but the figure remained still. Finally, Tom decided to drive around the figure, hoping to avoid any trouble. As he passed, he glanced in his rearview mirror and saw the figure vanish into thin air. Tom's heart raced, and he couldn't believe what he had just witnessed. He tried to rationalize it, thinking it might have been a mirage or a trick of the light, but deep down, he knew something supernatural had just occurred. The rest of the night was tense. Tom kept glancing over his shoulder, half expecting to see the figure again. As the hours dragged on, he noticed other oddities: strange noises coming from the truck's cabin, the temperature dropping inexplicably, and an unsettling sense of being watched. Around 3 a.m., Tom pulled into a way station to take a break. The place was deserted, and the silence was deafening. As he walked to the building to use the restroom, he heard faint whispers behind him. He spun around, but there was no one there. Tom's unease grew into full-blown fear. He decided to get back on the road, hoping to reach his destination as quickly as possible. As he drove, the whispers grew louder, and the shadows around him seemed to take on a life of their own. The truck's engine sputtered, and the lights flickered ominously. Just as dawn began to break, Tom saw something in the distance: a woman standing by the side of the road, her face obscured by shadows. She appeared to be hitchhiking, but there was something unsettling about her. Tom slowed down and rolled down the window, trying to get a better look. The woman's face came into view, and Tom was struck by how pale and gaunt she looked. Her eyes were hollow, and her mouth was twisted into a haunting smile. Tom felt a chill run down his spine as she said that seemed to echo, "I've been waiting for you." Panic set in, and Tom slammed the gas pedal, speeding past the woman. He glanced in the mirror and saw her standing there, still watching him if she were a ghost. As Tom approached the end of his route, he saw the old, dilapidated building from earlier. It loomed larger than before, and he felt an irresistible pull to stop. Against his better judgment, he pulled over and approached the building. Inside, he found old newspapers and photographs scattered about. One photo, in particular, caught his eye, a picture of the woman he had seen on the road. The article below it read, "Local woman missing last seen on Highway 55. Tom's heart raced. He realized the woman was not just a figment of his imagination, but a spirit bound to the highway. The article detailed how she had disappeared many years ago while hitchhiking and was never found. Her restless spirit was now haunting the road, waiting for someone to help her find peace. Tom left the building and drove the remaining miles to his destination in a state of shock. He reported the strange occurrences to his company and was advised to take a break. He never drove along Highway 55 again, and he always warned fellow drivers about the strange happenings on that desolate stretch of road. To this day, of Tom Jennings and the haunting of Highway 55 is passed along among truckers and travelers, a chilling reminder of the supernatural forces that can lurk in the shadows of the open road. As Tom drove away from the dilapidated building, his mind was consumed by the night's events. The revelation of the woman and the chilling realization that her spirit was still searching for peace left him shaken. By morning, he arrived at his destination, his hands trembling and his thoughts racing. He reported everything to his company, but could barely articulate the horror he had experienced. The company suggested he take a break, and Tom heeded their advice. He never returned to Highway 55, avoiding it for the rest of his career. The story of his encounter became a cautionary tale among truckers, a haunting reminder of the road's dark secrets. The scene runs through a remote stretch of countryside, known for its desolation and the unnerving quiet that envelops it after dark. For truck drivers, it's notorious for strange occurrences and eerie sightings. One particular story, shared among the trucking community, stands out as a chilling example of this. It's a story that James Harper, a seasoned truck driver, experienced firsthand. James Harper had been driving trucks for over 2 decades. He had traversed countless highways, battled all sorts of weather, and encountered every imaginable situation on the road. But the night of October 31st, 2022 would be unlike. Harper was tasked with a late-night delivery along Highway 13, a route he had taken many times before. The road was familiar, but that night, an unsettling sense of foreboding hung in the air. As Harper's rig roared to life and he left the bustling city behind, he felt a chill that was unusual for the season. The temperature had dropped sharply, and the air seemed to hold its breath. He turned up the heater and shook off the discomfort, attributing it to the weather. Around midnight, Harper approached a stretch of Highway 13 that was particularly isolated. The trees on either side of the road formed a dark tunnel, and the moonlight barely penetrated the thick canopy above. The quiet was profound, broken only by the hum of the truck's engine. Suddenly, Harper noticed a figure standing by the roadside. It was a woman, dressed in a tattered dress that fluttered in the breeze. She appeared to be hiking, holding a worn-out sign that read, "Help." Harper's heart skipped a beat. It was odd to see someone out here, especially at this hour. He slowed down, but something about the woman's appearance felt wrong. Her face was obscured by the shadows of the streetlights, and she seemed eerily still. Harper decided to pull over, hoping to offer assistance, but as he approached, the figure vanished. Harper's initial shock quickly gave way to a rational explanation. Maybe the woman had been a figment of his imagination, or a trick of the light. He shook his head and resumed driving, dismissing the encounter as a mirage. The rest of the drive was uneventful until Harper began hearing strange noises. First, it was a faint scratching sound, barely perceptible over the engine's roar. He checked the truck's cargo and tires, but everything seemed in order. The noise persisted, growing louder and more persistent. The scratching evolved into a rhythmic tapping, as if someone were knocking on the side of the truck. Harper's unease grew. He glanced at his mirrors and saw nothing unusual, but the tapping continued. The eerie noise was accompanied by an unsettling drop in temperature inside the cabin. Harper could see his breath misting in the cold air dot, just as Harper was about to pull over and investigate. The truck's headlights illuminated the woman from earlier. She was standing in the middle of the road again, a sign still raised. This time, her face was visible, and it was haunting. Her eyes were hollow, and her expression was one of desperation. Harper's heart pounded as he slammed on the brakes, skidding to a halt. He threw open the truck door and stepped out, his breath visible in the icy air. He approached the woman, but she remained motionless, her gaze fixed on him with an otherworldly intensity. As Harper reached out to speak to her, the woman's form began to dissolve into the mist. He could only watch in horror as she faded away, leaving behind a cold, empty space where she had stood. The temperature inside the truck dropped even further, and the tapping sound ceased abruptly, disturbed and exhausted. Harper continued driving, his mind racing. The sight of the woman and the strange noises were becoming too much to ignore. As dawn began to break, he pulled into a nearby diner to clear his head and warm up. Inside the diner, Harper met an elderly man who was a regular. As they chatted, Harper recounted his unsettling experience on Highway 13. The old man listened intently, his face growing solemn. When Harper finished, the man revealed a chilling piece of information. Highway 13 has its share of ghost stories, the old man said. One of the most talked about is a tale of a woman who disappeared many years ago. She was last seen hitchhiking on this very road. It's said that her spirit lingers, seeking help that she never received. Harper's blood ran cold as he realized that the woman he had encountered might have been that very spirit, trapped in a cycle of seeking aid that would never come. The diner's walls seemed to close in on him. He processed the information. Harper finished his delivery and drove back along Highway 13. But he did so with a heightened sense of vigilance. The haunting experience had left a lasting impression on him, and he found himself dreading the lonely stretches of road. As dawn broke, James Harper couldn't shake the unsettling feeling from the night before. The revelation of the woman's ghostly existence haunted him deeply. He completed his delivery, but couldn't escape the memories of Highway 13. The eerie silence and ghostly apparition had left a mark on him. Despite his attempts to rationalize the experience, he couldn't ignore the sense that he had encountered something beyond the natural. Harper's story became a chilling reminder among truck drivers, a warning about the mysterious and supernatural forces that can lurk on desolate roads. To this day, Highway 13 remains a place of haunting legends and eerie encounters.